Can you imagine facing a weapon so terrifying it seemed like magic? What would you do if flaming arrows rained down from the sky, or mysterious liquids burst into flames on contact with your ship? Ancient civilizations created devastating weapons that revolutionized warfare and struck fear into the hearts of enemies. These weren't just tools of destruction, they were game changers that shaped history itself. Number 6. Greek fire. The inextinguishable flame. Ever wondered what it feels like to see water catch fire? Byzantine sailors knew exactly how to make this nightmare a reality. Greek fire. The Byzantine Empire's most closely guarded military secret was perhaps the most terrifying naval weapon of the ancient world. Imagine being an enemy sailor in the 7th century AD, confidently approaching Constantinople, when suddenly jets of liquid flame shoot across the water toward your wooden ship, the most horrifying part. This wasn't ordinary fire. When sailors desperately threw water on the flames, they only grew stronger and more intense. The exact composition of Greek fire remains a mystery to this day. What we do know is that it contained a mixture of petroleum, quicklime, sulfur, and possibly saltpeter, creating a napalm-like substance that stuck to everything it touched. The Byzantines deployed this weapon through pressurized siphons, mounted on their ships, effectively creating the world's first flamethrowers. Emperor Constantine IV used Greek fire to spectacular effect during the First Arab Siege of Constantinople between 674 and 678 AD. The Byzantine navy decimated the Arab fleet, sending their enemies fleeing in terror as their ships burned uncontrollably. The psychological impact was just as powerful as the physical destruction. Rumors spread that the Byzantines had harnessed supernatural fire that burned on water. Greek fire saved the Byzantine Empire numerous times, helping preserve it for centuries longer than might have otherwise been possible. The formula was so vital to national security that it was kept secret even from most Byzantines. Only a select few families knew the recipe, passing it down from generation to generation. So successful was this secrecy that the exact formula disappeared with the fall of the empire, leaving modern scientists still debating its precise composition. Number 5. The Ballista. Ancient artillery. What happens when you scale up a crossbow to monstrous proportions? You get a weapon that can punch through enemy formations from hundreds of yards away. The ballista was the heavy artillery of the ancient world, a massive crossbow-like weapon that could hurl projectiles with devastating accuracy and force. First developed by the Greeks in the 5th century BC and later perfected by the Romans, these engines of war could launch stone balls, metal darts, or even flaming projectiles at enemy fortifications or troops. Roman engineers created increasingly sophisticated versions, building them from wood, iron, and tightly wound sinew or hair ropes that provided the torsional energy needed to fire projectiles. A well-built ballista, operated by a trained crew, could hit targets up to 500 yards away with enough force to penetrate armor or demolish walls. During the siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD, the Roman general Titus deployed ballistae with devastating effect. According to the historian Josephus, these weapons hurled stones weighing as much as a talent, roughly 75 pounds, that demolished defensive towers and crushed groups of men with single shot. Josephus described how Jewish defenders learned to watch for the white stones, which were visible in flight, shouting warnings when they saw them coming. "The stone is coming." This led the Romans to blacken the stones, making them nearly invisible until they struck. Ballistae weren't just siege weapons. Smaller, more mobile versions called carabalistae were mounted on carts and deployed with legions as field artillery. These weapons could fire heavy bolts capable of impaling multiple enemies at once, breaking up formations and sowing panic before infantry engagement. The psychological effect of ballistae cannot be overstated. Imagine being a defender on a city wall, believing yourself safe behind stone fortifications, only to witness massive projectiles smashing through your defenses with mechanical precision day after day. The constant barrage wore down not just walls, but morale, making surrender seem increasingly rational. Number 4. The Chariot. Mobile warfare platform. How do you completely transform battlefield mobility in the Bronze Age? Put warriors on wheels and watch them dominate. Before tanks or cavalry charges, there were chariots, the first mobile warfare platforms in history. These lightweight horse-drawn vehicles revolutionized combat around 2000 BC, creating a completely new form of warfare based on speed, shock, and mobility. The chariot first appeared in Mesopotamia, but reached its peak with the Egyptians, Hittites, and later the Persians. A typical war chariot carried 2 men, a driver and a warrior, equipped with a bow or javelin, and was pulled by 2 or 4 horses. Built with lightweight wood leather and sometimes bronze reinforcements, these vehicles could reach speeds of up to 20 miles per hour on flat terrain. The Battle of Kadesh in 1274 BC between the Egyptians under Ramses II and the Hittites under Muwatalli II featured perhaps the largest chariot battle in history, with thousands of chariots clashing on the plains of what is now Syria. Egyptian records describe how Ramses personally led a chariot charge when surrounded by Hittite forces, cutting his way through enemy lines in a dramatic escape that became the stuff of legend. Chariots weren't just transportation. They were mobile firing platforms. Archers could rain arrows down on infantry formations while staying out of reach, then quickly retreat before a counterattack. This hit-and-run capability made chariots devastatingly effective against tight formations of foot soldiers who simply couldn't catch the faster vehicles. The need to counter chariots drove military innovation for centuries. Armies developed specialized anti-chariot tactics, like the use of caltrops, metal spikes scattered on the ground, to lame horses, or trained infantry to open ranks and let chariots pass through rather than be broken by them. The Chinese went so far as to build elaborate crossbow chariots with multiple mounted weapons and rotating firing platforms. Perhaps most significantly, chariots reshaped ancient societies. The expense of building and maintaining chariots, plus training drivers and warriors, led to the rise of new military elite. In Egypt, Marianu chariot warriors formed an aristocratic class, while in Greece, wealth was measured by one's ability to maintain a chariot. The social status associated with chariots is reflected in burial practices. Many ancient rulers were entombed with their chariots, including the famous bronze chariots found in the tomb of China's first emperor. Number 3. The composite bow. The ancient sniper rifle. What if you could strike down your enemy before they even knew they were in battle? The composite bow made this terrifying reality possible. Long before gunpowder changed warfare, the composite bow reigned as the most advanced personal weapon on ancient battlefields. Unlike simple wooden bows, composite bows were technological marvels made from multiple materials, typically wood, horn, and sinew, laminated together to create a weapon with unprecedented power and range. The Scythians, nomadic horse archers from the Eurasian steppes, became masters of this weapon around 700 BC. These legendary warriors could shoot with astonishing accuracy while riding at full gallop, a skill that allowed them to attack and retreat without ever engaging in close combat. This Parthian shot, firing backward while pretending to retreat, became so famous that it entered our language as a metaphor. A skilled archer with a composite bow could hit targets at 300 yards and penetrate armor at closer ranges. The weapon's compact, recurved design made it ideal for horseback use, fundamentally changing military tactics. Instead of charging headlong into battle, armies like the Parthians, Huns, and Mongols could harass larger forces with arrows from a distance, picking them apart without ever allowing them to close for hand-to-hand combat. In 53 BC, the consequences of underestimating this weapon became catastrophically clear to Rome. At the Battle of Chariot, Parthian mounted archers equipped with composite bows utterly destroyed the Roman army under Crassus. The heavily armored Roman infantry, expecting to dominate in close combat, found themselves helplessly peppered with arrows that could penetrate their shields and armor. The Parthians simply maintained their distance, continually firing while riding around the Roman formation. Of 42,000 Romans who marched to Chariot, about 20,000 died and 10,000 were captured, making it one of Rome's worst military disasters. The manufacture of composite bows was so complex that it took years to master. Layers of wood, horn, and sinew had to be precisely cut, shaped, and laminated with natural glues in a process that could take a year or more to complete. Once finished, the bow had to be constantly maintained and protected from moisture. This difficult production process made composite bows extraordinarily valuable, often worth more than several months' wages for an average worker. Number 2, the trebuchet. Medieval demolition machine. How do you knock down castle walls built specifically to withstand attack? You build a war machine that harnesses gravity itself. The trebuchet represented the pinnacle of medieval siege engineering, dwarfing earlier catapults and transforming the nature of warfare. First appearing in China around the 4th century BC and reaching Europe during the Middle Ages, these massive machines could hurl projectiles weighing hundreds of pounds over castle walls with devastating accuracy, unlike the torsion-powered Ballista. The trebuchet operated on a counterweight system. A long wooden arm pivoted on a fulcrum with an enormous weight, often several tons, on the short end and a sling holding the projectile on the long end. When released, the falling counterweight whipped the arm upward, launching the projectile in a high arc toward its target. The physics behind this simple machine allowed for unprecedented power, far greater than human or animal muscle could generate. During the siege of Chateau Gaillard in 1203 to 1204, trebuchets played a crucial role in Philip II of France's victory over the supposedly impregnable fortress built by Richard the Lionheart. The French bombardment gradually reduced the outer defenses, allowing assault troops to advance. At Stirling Castle in 1304, Edward I of England deployed a monster trebuchet nicknamed Warwolf that was so intimidating that the Scottish garrison tried to surrender upon seeing it assembled. Edward refused their surrender, insisting on demonstrating his new weapon first. Trebuchets weren't just used to hurl stones. Creative commanders loaded them with all manner of projectiles designed to terrorize besieged populations. Dead horses and cattle were launched over walls to spread disease. Beehives caused chaos when they broke open among defenders. Human corpses infected with plague were used in some of history's earliest examples of biological warfare, notably by Mongol forces at the Siege of Kaffa in 1346, possibly contributing to the spread of the Black Death into Europe. The largest trebuchets could throw stones weighing over 300 pounds, more than 300 yards. The psychological impact of these weapons cannot be overstated. Defenders would watch as massive stones arced slowly through the air before crashing through roofs, pulverizing walls, or smashing into crowded streets. The slow, visible trajectory made the impact all the more terrifying. Inhabitants could see death coming, but were powerless to avoid it. Number 1. War elephants. Living tanks. What happens when a 12,000-pound animal charges directly into your battle formation? Ancient armies learned this answer the hard way. War elephants were perhaps the most spectacular weapon of the ancient world, living tanks that could break enemy formations, trample soldiers, and inspire absolute terror on the battlefield. First used in India around 1100 BC. War elephants spread westward as generals witnessed their devastating potential. Hannibal Barca's audacious crossing of the Alps, with 37 elephants in 218 BC during the Second Punic War, stands as one of history's most famous military maneuvers. Though most of his elephants died from the cold before seeing battle, their psychological impact was enormous. At the Battle of Trebia, Hannibal's remaining elephants caused panic among Roman cavalry, who had never encountered such beasts. The horses refused to advance, smelling the unfamiliar elephants and hearing their trumpeting calls. A fully equipped war elephant carried a wooden tower, howdah, containing archers or javelin throwers, while the elephant itself was often trained to use its tusks, trunk, and massive weight as weapons. Some armies fitted elephants with spiked armor or blades attached to their tusks. Indian war elephants sometimes carried scythed chariots that could mow down infantry. King Pyrrhus of Epirus deployed war elephants against the Romans in 280 BC, achieving victory, but at such high cost that we still use the term Pyrrhic victory today. The Romans, having never seen elephants, watched in horror as their formations were scattered by the massive beasts. Roman horses, similarly terrified, refused to approach them. Yet, the adaptable Romans quickly developed anti-elephant tactics. At the Battle of Zama in 202 BC, Scipio Africanus ordered his troops to open corridors when Carthaginian elephants charged, then attacked the beasts from the sides with javelins. Perhaps the most dangerous aspect of war elephants was their unpredictability. When wounded or panicked, elephants often went berserk, trampling friend and foe alike. Some clever commanders exploited this by targeting enemy elephants with burning arrows or loud noises, causing them to rampage back through the enemy's own lines. During the Battle of Magnesia in 190 BC, Antiochus III's elephants were driven mad by the spears of Roman soldiers and turned around to crush his own phalanx, contributing significantly to his defeat. The logistical challenges of maintaining war elephants were enormous. Each animal consumed around 300 to 600 pounds of fodder and 25 gallons of water daily. Armies required specialized elephant handlers, mahouts, who spent years training with their animals. Despite these challenges, elephants remained battlefield fixtures for centuries, with the last significant military use occurring during World War I, when elephants were used as heavy draft animals. Do ancient weapons like these still influence modern military thinking? What weapons of our own age will future generations look back on with the same mixture of awe and horror that we now view these ancient instruments of war?